first exciting bit of news is Monumental Part 1 of the study is actually going to be published this week in New England Journal of Medicine, and that study covers the dose escalation portion of this study. Here at this year's ASH meeting, we're actually presenting the data from the recommended phase 2 dosing at 2 specific doses, 0.4 milligrams per kilogram once weekly and 0.8 milligrams per kilogram every 2 weeks. The drug is given subcutaneously. And then the third cohort of particular interest is patients who've had prior T-cell redirection therapies, be they CAR Ts or bispecific. So those are the 3 cohorts being presented at this year's ASH meeting. So the results, first and foremost, are really impressive for an off-the-shelf therapy in really heavily treated patients. We're seeing a response rate of 73 to 74% in both doses and schedules of the drug in really advanced myeloma. In the cohort with prior T-cell redirection therapy, the response rate was 63%. And so, putting that into context, historically, to get a new drug approved in myeloma, we were looking for 20 to 30% response rate. And I always say, 60 to 100 is a new 20 to 30 because these responses are really outstanding. The median duration of response was over 9 months. So that's particularly encouraging. And in those who had CRs, it was even longer. And so that really bodes well. And in terms of side effect profile, it's pretty typical for bispecific. Rates of CRS were around 70%, primarily low grade. And the unique off-target toxicities of this particular agent are basically where else GPRC is expressed. So heavily keratinized tissues. So we see some nail changes and also some skin changes, which are quite manageable and early on. And then the other one is some taste changes, dysgeusia, also manageable. All of these side effects are typically responsive to supportive care and dose modifications, and the vast majority of patients stayed on therapy until they were in progression, or at the time of data cut, many were still in remission ongoing. Because patients with myeloma are continuing to relapse, and in particular, there was the Mammoth study which showed us that when patients are triple class refractory, which is PIs, IMiDs, and CD38, the historical outcome for these patients were quite poor, overall survival of 6 to 9 months. So in that space, we're getting all of these amazing T-cell redirection therapies in particular that are yielding 60 to 100% response rates and PFS of over 9 months. And so I think these agents, including Talquetamab, are really exciting option for patients. And it's good to have all these choices. And I think the other thing I would highlight is with Talquetamab, hopefully this Monumental 1 study, because it's a sizable number of patients treated at RP2D, the hope is this would lead to accelerated approval, depending on how the regulatory authorities feel about it. But clearly that the way to move forward in myeloma is combination therapy, because it's very genomically and immunologically complex. And I think some of the future studies that are ongoing with this agent highlight the excitement in here, which is combining Talquetamab with daratumumab and or pomalidomide, combining it with Talquetamab, the other bispecific, combining it with checkpoint inhibitors, and then also moving it into earlier lines of therapy with all the combination strategies with backbone agents that are proven in myeloma. And then finally, the confirmatory phase 3 study for this agent is basically Talquetamab plus daratumumab and or pomalidomide as compared to Dara, Pom, and Dex. So that's the phase 3 study that we hope would lead to definitive approval globally. But it's a really exciting time for patients to have yet another option that works so well. I just want to take a moment to thank the patients and staff that worked on this study, because this was during COVID, and I want to highlight something unique about this agent with respect to COVID. We know that some of the other BCMA targeting therapies are resulting in significant infectious complications, and we actually didn't see much of that in the study. The rates of grade 3-4 infections were quite low, less than approximately 15 or 10%. And notably, with respect to COVID, while there were a sizable number of patients with COVID, there were 2 deaths as compared to much higher in some of the other studies. So what's unique about this drug is it does not blunt the ability of patients to respond to COVID vaccine, and that infections profile of this agent is yet another feature that makes it combinable. So it's a very timely addition to our arsenal of myeloma drugs.